Welcome back to HOA Neighbor Wars. She called it standards and used it like a weapon. Teresa yelled that I started work before the approval email hit my inbox, and she loved technicalities. She was standing on my driveway at 7 in the morning with her phone on speaker, held high like it was some kind of compliance badge, screen turned away so I could not see what she was actually showing me. The fence panel was flat on the grass where the contractor had left it the night before. Just one panel, waiting for the final go-ahead from the HOA Architectural Committee. Teresa pointed at it like it was a bomb. "This is not getting delayed," she shouted, her voice cutting across the quiet morning air in our Park City, Utah neighborhood. The Kingsbridge Terrace Association has a zero-tolerance policy for fire hazards, and that panel is creating a fuel load in a wildfire zone. I am a safety compliance officer. I write incident reports for a living. I know what a fire hazard looks like, and a single fence panel lying flat on damp grass at dawn is not one. I looked at Teresa, then at the panel, then back at her. "The approval email came through at 11 last night," I said. "I checked my inbox at 6 this morning. The contractor is scheduled to start at 8. Teresa's eyes narrowed. She stepped closer, and I caught the faint chemical smell of her perfume mixed with the cool mountain air. "You think this is petty? I think this is my purpose," she said, her voice dropping into that low, satisfied tone I had heard before in HOA meetings. "The email timestamp is 11:04 p.m., and the rules state approval is considered received during business hours only. That means you have not technically received approval yet." I felt my jaw tighten. I had saved for 2 years to replace this fence. The old one was rotting at the posts, leaning inward, a genuine safety issue that the HOA had ignored until I submitted my replacement application. The contractor I hired was local, busy, and had squeezed me into a tight morning window. If Teresa managed to stop the work, I would pay a cancellation fee that would eat into the money I was saving for something important, something that actually mattered. I could not afford to let her derail this. I pulled my phone out and opened my email. "The timestamp says 11:04 p.m., I said, keeping my voice level. "The Architectural Committee approved my fence design, materials, and placement. The contractor has the plans, the county permit, and the HOA approval letter. What exactly are you claiming is not approved?" Teresa smiled. It was the kind of smile that made my stomach drop. "The placement," she said. "The survey shows your fence line encroaches 6 inches into the HOA common area setback. The Architectural Committee did not catch it, but I did. And as landscaping committee lead, I have the authority to halt any project that affects HOA-managed green space." She pulled a tape measure from her windbreaker pocket and snapped it open with a sharp metallic crack. The yellow tape extended across the grass, and she knelt down next to the property line markers that had been there for years. 6 inches, she repeated. "You are building on HOA land. That is a violation before you even start." I looked at the survey stakes the contractor had placed the week before. They were exactly where the county survey map showed the property line. I had paid for that survey myself after the HOA refused to provide their records. The stakes were bright orange with reflective tape, impossible to miss. "Teresa, those stakes match the county survey," I said. "If you think they are wrong, show me your survey." She stood up and brushed off her knees. "The HOA does not need to provide our survey," she said. "You are required to comply with our setback rules, and I am telling you right now that your placement is in violation. If your contractor shows up and starts digging, I will call the sheriff and report unpermitted construction on HOA property." That was the moment I realized Teresa was not trying to enforce the rules. She was trying to weaponize them. The Kingsbridge Terrace Association was one of those places where the board called everything a setback emergency, where every project got delayed, every variance required 3 hearings, and every neighbor who pushed back got buried in notices and fees. I had lived here for 3 years and watched Teresa turn the landscaping committee into her personal enforcement army. She filed complaints weekly, showed up at properties with a clipboard and her phone camera, and loved to corner people in their driveways to lecture them about compliance. But I had something she did not know about yet. I had been gathering proof for months. Screenshots of the HOA group chat where Teresa and 2 board members coordinated targeted enforcement waves, going after specific homeowners who had questioned the budget or voted against her pet projects. I had recordings of HOA meetings where objections were erased from the minutes after the fact. I had emails showing Teresa telling the management company to ignore variance requests from people she did not like. And I had one more thing. A city code enforcement confirmation that the HOA had no authority over fence placement as long as it met county setback rules, which mine did. I was not going to show her any of that yet. I walked away on purpose, because I wanted her to follow and say more. She did. She trailed me across the lawn, her voice rising. "Keep arguing. You are making my case for me," she called out. "Every word you say proves you know you are in violation and you are proceeding anyway. I am documenting all of this." I stopped at the edge of my driveway and turned around. Teresa was holding her phone up again, the cracked screen glinting in the early light. That cracked screen had become her signature prop. She used it to film every interaction, every alleged violation, every moment she thought she could weaponize later. I had seen her do it to other neighbors, shoving the phone in their faces while she rattled off rule numbers and hearing dates. "Fine," I said. "Document it. But my contractor is starting at 8, and unless you have a legal injunction, you are trespassing on my property." Teresa laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. "Trespassing," she repeated. "That is rich. You are the one building on HOA land. I will be right here when your contractor arrives, and I will make sure he knows exactly what kind of liability he is taking on." At 7:55, the contractor's truck pulled up. His name was Miguel, and he ran a small crew that did fences, decks, and retaining walls all over Summit County. He was professional, licensed, and busy enough that he did not need my job, but he had fit me in as a favor, because I had been honest about the HOA situation. He parked on the street and climbed out carrying a clipboard and a canvas tool bag. Teresa was waiting for him. She stepped into his path before he reached the driveway, her phone already up. "Are you the contractor for this fence project?" she asked. It was not really a question. Miguel looked at her, then at me, then back at her. "Yes," he said carefully. "I am Miguel. I have the permits and the plans." Teresa shook her head. "This project is under HOA review for a setback violation," she said. "If you proceed, you will be working on HOA common property without authorization, and the association will hold you personally liable for removal costs and restoration fees." Miguel glanced at me. I walked over and handed him a folder. "That is the county survey," I said. "The property line is exactly where the stakes are. The HOA does not have authority over county setback rules, and I have written confirmation from code enforcement." Teresa's face went red. She stepped closer to Miguel. "You are taking his word over the HOA," she said. "That is a mistake. I am going to make sure the management company files a claim against your license." Miguel looked at the survey, then at the stakes, then at Teresa. He set his clipboard down on the truck bed. "I do not work for the HOA," he said. "I work for him, and his permits are valid. If you have a problem, take it up with the county." Teresa's voice jumped an octave. "I am taking it up with you," she snapped. "You do not start work until the HOA Architectural Committee confirms this placement, and I am calling an emergency hearing right now." She turned and walked toward the curb, her phone already at her ear. I could hear her talking fast, demanding someone from the management company pick up, threatening to escalate to the board president. Miguel looked at me. "Is she serious?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "But we have a tight window, and if we do not start now, you are booked through next month. Can you start on the old fence removal while I deal with this?" Miguel nodded. He pulled his drill from the tool bag and walked over to the old fence. The first section was ready to come down. He started unscrewing the rails from the rotting posts, and the sound of the drill cut through the morning quiet. Teresa whipped around, her eyes wide. "Stop," she yelled. I said stop working. Miguel did not stop. He pulled the first rail free and set it on the ground. Teresa ran back across the lawn, her purple windbreaker flapping. She was holding her phone out in front of her like a weapon. "I am calling the sheriff," she said. "This is an illegal construction site." I stepped between her and Miguel. "Teresa, you do not have legal authority to stop permitted work on private property," I said. "If you call the sheriff, they are going to tell you the same thing." She stabbed at her phone screen. "We will see," she said. 20 minutes later, a Summit County Sheriff's cruiser pulled up. The deputy who got out was a guy I had seen around the neighborhood before, a calm, older officer who looked like he had dealt with HOA disputes before and was not thrilled to be doing it again. He walked up the driveway slowly, taking in the scene, Miguel working on the fence, me standing with my folder of permits, and Teresa practically vibrating with outrage. The deputy nodded at me. "Morning," he said. "I am Deputy Carr. I got a call about unpermitted construction." "What is going on?" Teresa jumped in before I could answer. "He is building a fence on HOA property," she said, pointing at the survey stakes. "The HOA has not approved the placement, and he is proceeding anyway. I need you to issue a stop work order." Deputy Carr looked at the stakes, then at me. "Do you have permits?" he asked. I handed him the folder. "County building permit, HOA architectural approval, and the property survey," I said. "The fence is inside my property line and meets all county setback requirements." The deputy opened the folder and scanned the documents. He walked over to the stakes and looked at the measurements. Then he turned to Teresa. "Ma'am, this looks like a civil issue between you and the homeowner," he said. "The permits are valid, and the work is on private property. I cannot issue a stop work order." Teresa's face went from red to purple. "That is not acceptable," she said. "The HOA has authority over all exterior modifications, and I am telling you this is a violation. You need to enforce the association rules." Deputy Carr's expression did not change. "Ma'am, the HOA is a private organization," he said. "I enforce county and state law. If you believe there is a violation of your association rules, you need to handle that through your internal process or civil court. I am not going to stop permitted work based on an HOA dispute." Teresa stared at him. Then she turned and pointed at Miguel. "He is aiding and abetting a violation," she said. "I want his information so I can file a complaint with the State Contractor Licensing Board." Deputy Carr shook his head. "Ma'am, I am not going to collect contractor information for an HOA dispute," he said. "If you have a complaint, you can file it yourself. Now, unless there is an actual crime or safety hazard here, I need to get back on patrol." Teresa opened her mouth, closed it, then spun on her heel and marched back to her car. She did not leave. She sat in the driver's seat with her phone pressed to her ear, making call after call. I watched her through the windshield, her mouth moving fast, her free hand jabbing at the air. Miguel finished pulling down the old fence and started measuring for the new post holes. By 9:30, he had marked the spots and was setting up the auger. That was when Teresa got out of her car again, this time with a printed notice in her hand. She walked up to me and shoved the paper at my chest. "This is a formal notice of violation," she said. "The Architectural Committee has scheduled an emergency hearing for 6 p.m. tonight, and your fence work is suspended until the hearing concludes. Failure to comply will result in daily fines of $500. I took the notice and read it. It was printed on Kingsbridge Terrace Association letterhead and signed by Teresa as landscaping committee lead. The hearing date was today. The violation listed was encroachment on HOA common area. At the bottom, in bold print, it said failure to attend the hearing would result in an automatic ruling against me and immediate fine assessment. This hearing was not on the schedule last night, I said. You cannot call an emergency hearing with 6 hours' notice and claim I am required to attend. Teresa smiled again. Emergency hearings can be called at any time when there is an immediate threat to HOA property or safety, she said. The rules are very clear. You have been notified, and now you have a choice. Stop work and attend the hearing, or keep working and pay the fines. I looked at Miguel. He was already drilling the first post hole. The sound of the auger biting into the dirt was loud and steady. If I stopped now, I would lose the day, lose the contractor, and probably lose the cancellation fee. If I kept going, Teresa would stack fines on me until I either gave up or went broke. I made a decision. Miguel, keep working, I called out. I will deal with the hearing. Teresa's smile widened. Perfect, she said. That is exactly what I needed you to say. She walked back to her car and drove off. I stood there holding the notice, my heart pounding. I knew what she was doing. She was building a paper trail to justify the fines, to make it look like I was willfully defying the HOA, to create a narrative where I was the problem and she was just enforcing the rules. But I also knew something she did not. I had been recording every interaction with her since the moment she showed up this morning. My backpack had a camera case inside, and the camera had been running the whole time. By noon, Miguel had 3 post holes dug and was mixing concrete. The fence line was taking shape. I spent the time pulling together every document I had: the county survey, the code enforcement letter, the email approvals, the screenshots of the HOA group chat, and the recordings. I also sent a message to my ally, a neighborhood security guard named Reggie, who had worked for the HOA's contracted security company for 5 years. Reggie had seen Teresa operate up close. He had been asked to escort homeowners off common areas during disputes, to stand by while Teresa issued violations, to play the muscle in situations that had nothing to do with actual security. He was tired of it, and he had started quietly documenting Teresa's pattern of harassment. Reggie texted me back within 10 minutes. I will be at the hearing tonight. I have notes. At 5:30, I walked over to the HOA clubhouse. It was a low, stucco building with a red tile roof, tucked into a corner of the neighborhood near the mailboxes and the playground. The parking lot was half full. I recognized a few cars: Teresa's sedan, the board president's truck, and the management company rep's SUV. Inside, the meeting room smelled like old coffee and air conditioning. Folding chairs were set up in rows, and a long table sat at the front with name placards for the board members. Teresa was already there, sitting at the front table with a binder open in front of her. The board president, a retired guy named Ed who usually let Teresa run the show, sat next to her looking uncomfortable. The management company rep, a woman in a blazer who handled day-to-day admin, was typing on a laptop at the end of the table. Reggie slipped in a few minutes after me and took a seat near the back. He gave me a small nod. At 6, Ed called the meeting to order. We are here for an emergency architectural hearing regarding a fence installation at 428 Ridgeline Court, he said, reading from a script. Teresa King, as landscaping committee lead, has filed a violation claim. Teresa, go ahead. Teresa stood up. She opened her binder and pulled out photos, printed emails, and a diagram. She laid them on the table like evidence in a trial. The homeowner at 428 Ridgeline Court submitted an application for a fence replacement, which was approved by the Architectural Committee, she said. However, after approval, I conducted a site inspection and discovered that the proposed fence line encroaches 6 inches into the HOA common area setback. This encroachment violates Article 7, Section 3 of the CC&Rs, which requires a minimum 10-foot setback from property lines to any permanent structure. She pointed at the diagram. As you can see, the survey stakes are placed inside the setback zone. The homeowner was notified this morning and proceeded with construction anyway, despite being issued a formal stop work notice. This is a willful violation, and I recommend immediate fines and removal of the installed posts. Ed looked at me. Do you want to respond? I stood up and walked to the front. I had a folder with me, and I set it on the table. Teresa is correct that I submitted a fence application and received approval, I said. She is incorrect about the encroachment. The property line shown on the county survey places the fence entirely within my lot. The HOA setback rule applies to the distance from the property line to the fence, not from some arbitrary point Teresa measured this morning. I pulled out the survey and pointed to the boundary markers. This is the legal property line recorded with Summit County, I said. My fence is 10 feet 3 inches inside that line. It meets the HOA setback rule and the county setback rule. Teresa's claim is based on a measurement that does not match the legal boundary. Teresa stood up. The HOA commissioned its own survey 15 years ago, and that survey shows a different boundary, she said. The homeowner is using a newer survey that conflicts with the HOA's records. I looked at Ed. Can I see the HOA survey? Ed glanced at Teresa. She hesitated. The HOA survey is part of our internal records, she said. It is not available for general review. I pulled out my phone. Under Utah HOA law, association records related to property boundaries and common areas are required to be available to homeowners upon request, I said. I submitted a records request 3 weeks ago. The management company never responded. If the HOA has a survey that contradicts the county, I have a legal right to see it. The management company rep looked up from her laptop. We did not receive a records request, she said. I opened my email and turned the phone around so Ed could see the screen. Sent March 8th, I said. Certified receipt confirmed March 10th. No response. Ed sighed. He looked at Teresa. Do we have the old survey? Teresa did not answer right away. She flipped through her binder, then closed it. The survey is not immediately available, she said. But the CC and Rs are clear. If there is any dispute about the boundary, the HOA interpretation takes precedence until resolved by the board. I could feel the room shift. A couple of homeowners in the audience whispered to each other. Reggie was watching Teresa with his arms crossed. That is not how property law works, I said. The county survey is the legal boundary. The HOA cannot override it with an internal interpretation. Teresa's voice got louder. You are not a lawyer, she said. You do not get to decide what the rules mean. The board makes that determination, and I am recommending that the board rule in favor of the violation, claim and assess fines until the fence is removed. If you are enjoying this story, hit the like button and subscribe for more wild HOA drama. Ed looked uncomfortable. He glanced at the management company rep. What is your recommendation? He asked. The rep looked at me, then at Teresa. If the homeowner has a current county survey and valid permits, the HOA should not be assessing fines based on a boundary dispute, she said. That could open the association to liability. My recommendation is to table the violation claim until we can review both surveys and get a legal opinion. Teresa's face went dark. We do not need a legal opinion, she said. The rules are clear, and he violated them. If we let this slide, Every homeowner is going to ignore setback rules and claim their survey is better than ours. Ed cleared his throat. I think we should table it, he said. I do not want to fine someone if we are not sure about the boundary. Teresa stood there for a long moment. Then she closed her binder with a sharp snap. Fine, she said. But I am filing a formal objection to this decision, and I am requesting that the board review the entire architectural approval process for irregularities. She turned and walked out of the meeting room. The door swung shut behind her. The room was silent for a beat. Then Ed adjourned the hearing. I picked up my folder and walked toward the exit. Reggie caught up with me in the parking lot. That went better than I expected, he said. I shook my head. It is not over, I said. She is going to escalate. Reggie nodded. I know, he said. I have seen her do this before. She is going to find another angle. He was right. 2 days later, I got a second notice. This one was not about the fence. It was about a missed hearing I was never told about. The notice claimed I had been scheduled for a landscaping compliance review 4 weeks earlier, failed to attend, and was now in violation for neglected yard maintenance. The fine was $250, and it was marked overdue. I pulled my calendar. There was no hearing on that date. I checked my email. No notice. I called the management company. The rep who answered said the notice had been mailed, and it was my responsibility to check my mail. I asked for proof of mailing. She said she would look into it and call me back. She never did. A week after that, I came home from work to find a tow truck parked in front of my house. The driver was hooking up my car. I ran down the driveway. What are you doing? I shouted. The driver, a big guy in a stained t-shirt, pointed at a clipboard. HOA authorization, he said. Your vehicle is parked in violation of guest parking restrictions. My car was in my own driveway. I pointed at the garage. That is my driveway, I said. You cannot tow a car from private property without my permission. He shrugged. I got an order from the HOA management company, he said. They said you are in violation and authorized a tow. If you have a problem, take it up with them. I pulled out my phone and called the management company. It went to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I looked at the tow truck driver. Who called this in? I asked. He checked his clipboard. Teresa King, he said. She is listed as the HOA enforcement coordinator. I felt my blood pressure spike. That is not a real position, I said. She does not have authority to authorize tows from private property. The driver did not care. He lowered the lift and started securing my car. I stepped in front of him. You are stealing my car, I said. If you take it, I am calling the sheriff and filing a theft report. He stopped. His hand was on the winch control. He looked at me, then at the clipboard, then back at me. He pulled out his phone and made a call. After a minute, he hung up. My dispatcher says to leave it, he said, but you need to sort this out with your HOA. He unhooked my car and drove off. I stood there shaking. Teresa had just tried to have my car stolen. That was not an exaggeration. She had called a tow company, lied about a violation, and tried to take my property. And she had almost gotten away with it. That night, I sat down and wrote everything out. Every interaction, every notice, every call, every hearing. I pulled the recordings from my camera. I pulled the email chains. I pulled the HOA group chat screenshots. I organized it all into a timeline. Then I filed a formal records complaint with the HOA management company and attached the proof so the board could not hide it. The next board meeting was 2 weeks later. I showed up early. Reggie was already there. He had a folder of his own. Inside were notes from every time Teresa had used the security company to harass homeowners. Every time she had demanded he block driveways or stand by during disputes. Every time she had twisted the rules to punish people who disagreed with her. The meeting started at 7. Ed called roll, approved the last meeting's minutes, and moved to new business. I raised my hand. I would like to submit a formal complaint against Teresa King for harassment, abuse of authority, and fraudulent enforcement actions, I said. The room went dead quiet. Teresa, sitting at the front table, stared at me. "You cannot do that," she said. "I can," I said. "And I am." I walked to the front and handed Ed a packet. It contained the timeline, the recordings, the email chains, the group chat screenshots, and Reggie's notes. Ed opened it and started reading. His face changed. He flipped a page, then another. He looked at Teresa. "Did you authorize a tow on this homeowner's vehicle?" he asked. Teresa's mouth opened, then closed. "That was a mistake," she said. "The tow company misunderstood my instructions." I played the recording. It was the conversation I had with the tow truck driver, clear audio of him saying Teresa King authorized the tow and that she was listed as the HOA enforcement coordinator. Then I played a second recording, the one from the morning Teresa confronted me about the fence. Her voice came through the speaker, loud and sharp. "Keep arguing. You are making my case for me." Ed closed the packet. He looked at the other board members. "I think we need to discuss this in executive session," he said. Teresa stood up. "This is a witch hunt," she said. "He has been violating rules for months, and now he is trying to deflect by attacking me." Ed held up his hand. "Teresa, sit down," he said. "We are taking this seriously." The board went into executive session. The rest of us waited in the meeting room. Reggie sat next to me. "You did good," he said. "This is the first time I have seen anyone actually fight back with proof." 30 minutes later, the board came back. Ed looked tired. "After reviewing the complaint and the evidence, the board has determined that Teresa King overstepped her authority in multiple instances," he said. "Effective immediately, Teresa is removed from the landscaping committee and is no longer authorized to issue violations or coordinate enforcement actions. The board will also be conducting a full audit of recent violation notices and fines to ensure compliance with association rules and Utah law." Teresa stood up. Her face was flushed. "This is absurd," she said. "You are letting him get away with—" Ed cut her off. "Teresa, the decision is final," he said. "If you continue to disrupt this meeting, I will ask you to leave." Teresa grabbed her binder and walked out. The door slammed behind her. 2 weeks later, I got a letter from the management company. It was short. "After reviewing your records complaint and the evidence provided, the association has determined that the violation notices issued against you were unfounded. All fines have been reversed, and your account has been credited for overpayments. Additionally, Teresa King's complaint regarding your fence placement has been ruled invalid due to lack of supporting documentation. Your fence installation is approved as submitted." I read the letter 3 times. Then I called Miguel and told him to schedule the final inspection. A month later, my fence was finished. It was clean, level, and exactly where the county survey said it should be. Teresa never came back. I saw her once, driving past my house with her phone pressed to her ear, but she did not stop. The minutes from the board meeting recorded the reversal and the reason: abuse of authority and fraudulent enforcement. Karen's complaint was ruled unfounded with evidence cited. The funny part? Teresa tried to flex authority over the tow company, and when I checked the HOA policy later, it said the board had to vote to authorize any tow from private property. She had violated her own rules. The board also sent a formal complaint to the management company about Teresa's conduct, which triggered an internal review and eventually a letter of discipline in her HOA file. That was the payback, a complaint to the management company that triggered discipline. I still live in Kingsbridge Terrace. The fence is holding up great. And every time I walk past it, I think about how Teresa's biggest mistake was not that she tried to bully me. It was that she kept talking, kept threatening, kept escalating, all while I was recording every word. Thank you, and I will see you next time.